Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. UGT founder Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Jai. Jaya Goda Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Shri Guru and Shri Govinda. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Vishnu Padaya Vishnu. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Bol.
Okay, so we just got married again. Don't ask for another ceremony, okay? Okay, Hare Krishna, everyone. Nice to be with all of you. Thank you for making it here on this dark, foggy, dreary Sunday morning in the Loire Valley. We are in the Loire Valley, right? Is this considered like the Loire Valley?
We are close. Not very. We are actually very.
Very?
Very, yeah.
Okay. Welcome to Very. Very. Okay. All right. Okay, so this morning we're reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, which is is very wonderful. We used to do this also on Sunday mornings in Soho. Eventually we finished and we stopped, which I think is very sad, but it's wonderful that you continue doing that here. Hearing from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. Just curious who here has read Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita from cover to cover. Who's read like your Ever Well-Wisher, the abridged version? Because they are different. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, very such a valuable, wonderful service that His Holiness Satsvarup Das Goswami Maharaj performed by compiling and presenting Srila Prabhupada's life, the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, and so beneficial for all of us as followers of Srila Prabhupada and for many future generations, of course, to be able to have the pastimes of Srila Prabhupada encapsulated like that. So, maybe we'll speak a few more things. I think before we begin, we can chant the invocation prayers. Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttarapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Sha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Saharitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Deva Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishamanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. All together. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So in Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada explains that there's two Bhagavats. Anyone remembers what they are? Two different types of Bhagavats. There's the book Bhagavat and there is the person Bhagavat. So there is the book that explains about Bhagavan, and then there's the person who has understood about Bhagavan and also shares about Bhagavan. So we're reading today about the person Bhagavan. In fact, that perfected person. Yeah, just thinking about Srila Prabhupada and like, wow, there's so much to share and so much to say in glorification of His divine grace. just one thing that comes to mind before we begin reading is just that we're so fortunate to have come in contact with Srila Prabhupada, and our relationship will develop with him as we continue to progress in devotional service. But just I wanted to mention that Srila Prabhupada is the Senapati Bhakti. He is the personality that was sent directly, predicted by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to come. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu predicted that in the future there will be a person who will come and he will spread the teachings far and wide. And it's so obvious and so clear that Srila Prabhupada is that personality. So really we're immensely blessed that we are here at this time in life to have had such close association with Srila Prabhupada through Prabhupada's disciples. Some of us met Srila Prabhupada, directly encountered him. Many of us didn't, but his disciples so amazingly and wonderfully under his guidance recorded so many of his talks, collected and kept so many of his letters. Even there are videos of Srila Prabhupada, and so many amazing things. Some years ago, there was a talk in Oxford, and it was for the 50th anniversary of ISKCON, coming up now to the 60th anniversary. And Anuttama Prabhu, he shared with us this video. You can find it online. It's really profound. One scholar who was around at the time of Srila Prabhupada, and his name is Hopkins, John Hopkins, Professor John Hopkins. And he was at this gathering, and they had asked him to speak on Srila Prabhupada. And so from an academic perspective, he said, if you ask me to glorify someone, then I have to, academically, I have to present someone to glorify them against. Means their glories are extolled by comparison. So we can understand the glories of this person and this person, so therefore we can see the glories of this person. So he was explaining this is the academic way of glorifying someone. So he said, so I thought long and hard before this presentation, and there are only two people that I can actually compare Srila Prabhupada to. Anyone here is familiar with this presentation? Okay. So this Professor John Hopkins said there are only two people. He said the first one is Muhammad. And he said the second one is Lord Jesus Christ. And then he explained why. And he said because both of these personalities, they took a philosophy, a knowledge or understanding, and they gave it to thousands of people. And from that they created a culture that has gone on for hundreds of thousands of years. He said, but actually, Srila Prabhupada can't even be compared to either of them because he is much greater. Because both of them started in familiar lands, with familiar people, with people who were familiar to the ideas of what they were presenting. They had help from their families, help from friends, help from followers who were just there in that locale. He said what Srila Prabhupada did is he took the teachings from one land and transplanted them to a completely different culture. Jaya, Shri Radha Govinda, Shri Krishna Bhava, Shri Lilamrita. And he says, and that has never really been done before. And Srila Prabhupada did it on his own. He didn't have any help. He was begging for help from friends and family, and no one would help him. And therefore, on his own, he transplanted the seed of Bhakti. And he planted that seed in New York City. And he nourished that seed with the help of people who were completely unfamiliar with this new culture and philosophy that he was presenting. And by that devotion, that seed of Bhakti has sprouted and has grown all over the world. So in this way, we can see what an exalted person Srila Prabhupada is. But it's so easy for us to take it for granted. Jai Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada. It's like, Shri Guru Charana Jaya Prabhupada. Because he's just here. He's so easily accessible for us. But we really, for those who aren't so familiar, they look at what Srila Prabhupada has done and they think, your spiritual master is so exalted. Do you realize what he's done? And we're like, yeah, of course. Anyway, sorry, I went off on a tangent. My wife will correct me and chastise me later. Okay, so we're going to read from the Prabhupada Lilamrita. Would you like to read? Sure.
Okay. Those disciples who lived at the storefront had risen by 6:30, bathed and assembled downstairs by 7, while those who lived outside were arriving separately, taking off their coats and piling them on the shelf of the display window. Although women always attended the evening meetings, Jadurani was usually the only girl who came in the morning. After breakfast, she would begin painting upstairs in the Swami's front room. She used a beginner's technique of dividing the canvas into vertical and horizontal grid lines and transposing bit by bit the corresponding sections of a photograph onto the canvas. The process was painstaking, and sometimes her painting was out of proportion. But Jadurani was sincere, and that pleased Prabhupada. She had completed several paintings of four-armed Vishnu, a new painting of Radha Krishna, and a painting of Lord Chaitanya and his associates. When the painting of Lord Chaitanya was finished, Swamiji had hung it in the temple. Now, he announced, there should be no more nonsense here. Lord Chaitanya is present. Yeah, I was going to say that when you look, who's been to 26 2nd Avenue? So yeah, very sacred, it's very special that we're actually reading this because we're honoured to do service there at the moment. And when you walk in and see the paintings, like I'm sitting here now and I'm looking at Krishna Balaram and I'm looking at Krishna here, and the paintings are so, the quality stands out. They're so exquisite, they're so beautiful. When you look at those paintings in 26 2nd Avenue, they're crude in comparison. Like they look a bit rough, as it were. But it's interesting that in this place and other places, for Prabhupada, when he saw these paintings, he just saw the Lord. He just saw the potency that now Krishna has appeared, now Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has appeared, and there is one Panchatattva, and I don't know if it's that one that Prabhupada's referring to here, but there's Panchatattva in 26 2nd Avenue, which Jadurani painted, and Prabhupada said that if you chant and dance in front of this Panchatattva, you will go back to Godhead. And you look at it, I'm not saying it's not a nice painting, but I'm saying when you compare to later paintings, but for Prabhupada it was like, that's good enough. And he could just see that that was a bona fide offering of devotion, of service, and it was perfect. So it's really nice because it's there and we have programs and obviously chanting and dancing in front of it, and you just remember that painting is like a portal to the spiritual world.
Actually, feeling when we were given this section, because it's just successive reading every week from Lilamrita. But when we were given this section, we were like, oh wow, that's great, it's in New York, it's in the early days. And because we are getting the opportunity to serve there at Matchless Gifts. And we're doing little tours every day because it's been renovated to be kind of like a holy tirtha and a museum, so people are coming in. And one of the things I say is this is an original Jadurani painting. And there's one story that Jadurani Devi tells of how she started painting, which was that Srila Prabhupada asked Mukunda, who's now Mukunda Maharaj, but asked Mukunda, go down and ask the devotees, what is their gift from Krishna? And, what is their talent? And so Mukunda asked Radharani, and she explains, I was like a 19-year-old girl. I had no idea what my talent was. And she looked at Mukunda and she thought for a minute, and she said, well, when I was a kid, I liked to draw. And then she said, so maybe I'm an artist. And so Mukunda went back to Prabhupada and told Prabhupada, and then Prabhupada said, yes, she should paint for Krishna. And so then Prabhupada instructed her to start painting. But she was by no means an artist. And as Bhakti was explaining, that if you look at the original paintings and compare them side by side with what she's doing now, it's like a world of difference. But Prabhupada, as Bhakti again was saying, was so accepting of that offering of love. And you can imagine Prabhupada came from Radha Damodar temple in Vrindavan, surrounded by devotees chanting the holy names. And here he is in the Lower East Side of New York City in the 60s, in the Bowery, like such a low-class area, surrounded by all these like Western-bodied hippie people. He must have been thinking, I've gone to hell, this is crazy. But he could see that just by chanting the holy names, that seed of bhakti was sprouting in him, and he could understand what so many of his godbrothers and followers of Lord Chaitanya who had predicted that the holy name would be spread to every town and village, but people thought, how's that ever going to happen, And then also stuck in a mindset of, I guess you could say almost like a little bit of a smarta mindset that, this is only for Indians, or this is only for Brahmins, or this is only for certain type of people. Other people are just disqualified. And here Prabhupada, in the mood of Lord Nityananda, is on the Lower East Side with probably the most degraded of people, in one sense. And they're taking up devotional service with enthusiasm. We were just discussing the other day how Prabhupada was in Jhansi, in India, surrounded by people from India, trying to encourage them to take to this process of Krishna consciousness. And he only made one disciple. And he was writing so many letters just saying, look, you have so many sons. Just give me one son, and I will train him, And everyone was like, forget it, it's crazy, And Prabhupada had to go so far away. So, yeah, here at this place, and actually we recently acquired two original paintings. We had, some of them were copies in 26 Second Avenue. We actually acquired the one that was behind Srila Prabhupada, which is a Radha Krishna painting that was original from Jadavani. And then also there's a Panchatattva picture in the window of 26 Second Avenue. And so now we've also acquired that original painting is now in the window of 26 Second Avenue. And that came from Mahaprabhu Prabhu and Radhadesh. Some of you may know he's art collector from Mosa. And he wrote to Jadharani, he purchased it many years ago, and he wrote to Jadharani and he said, what condition is this painting in? Because I want to take this old frame off and put a proper frame on it. And she said, no! Whatever you do, don't remove that frame. And he's like, okay, why? And she said, Srila Prabhupada put that frame on that picture with his own hands. You can't ever take that frame off of that picture. So powerful, So now that picture is there in 26 Second Avenue, back where it belongs. Hare Krishna.
After the morning kirtan, Swami said, as usual, now chant one round. They chanted together, following him. They all had a vow to chant 16 rounds daily, but they chanted the first round in the morning in the Swami's presence, so he could see each of them. As Swamiji chanted, he looked out at 2nd Avenue, which was mostly deserted, or at the pictures on the wall. or with concerned glances at the individual devotees. Sometimes he seemed surprised when he saw them chanting so earnestly, giving evidence of the power of the holy name to deliver even the most fallen. Some of the devotees kept their beads in a bead bag like his, but when they chanted the first round together in the morning, they initiated him by imitated him by holding their beads out in both hands and chanting along with him. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, until they finish one round. Yeah, there's replica, it's not the original, but the replica of in Prabhupada's own handwriting of the instructions he wrote after he first initiated everyone at 26 Second Avenue, and he says, and it's stuck, at the time it was stuck as well on the back of the bathroom door, which is in 26 Second, and it's in his writing. He's explaining that now you're initiated, these are the four regular principles you should know and you should follow, and that you have to chant 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra on your beads every day. And you put that after. So people came after they did the ceremony, which, was like, what is this? It's exciting, or we just sit around this fire or whatever. And then they read, wait, what? They have to follow these things and you chant on these beads. And so it's on the back of the door in his writing.
I think it's so nice that Prabhupada was there chanting with the devotees in the morning, and then he would have them all chant one round together, and he would make sure they were chanting properly. It just shows his fatherly love and affection, but also I was hearing, because I'm listening to Prabhupada Lilamrita audiobook at the moment, and Prabhupada has come back to Vrindavan now just before they're about to open. And everything has finally come up nice. This was after the failed opening on Janmashtami in August the year before, so this is almost 8 months later. And when Prabhupada went for Janmashtami, just before Janmashtami, it was meant to open in 2 weeks and nothing was finished. And he was like so furious. Then he comes back just before Ram Navami the next year, and everything is like almost complete and perfect. And so he says to Surabi Maharaj, everyone is glorifying you for this one. Everyone is glorifying Surabi Maharaj for the wonderful job he has done. He said, but me, I am only criticizing, because that is my job. I have to criticize the disciple. He says, but we are so happy with Surabi Maharaj. So like that, you can see Prabhupada had to take on that mood of being the spiritual master, being the guru, being the leader, but at the same time he had such love for all of his disciples. If anyone else has any reflection or thing that they would like to share while we're reading, please, this is interactive, it's not just like us, so please feel free to raise your hand and offer a reflection if you have something. Is that okay? No, you're all very shy.
Prabhu.
Yes.
Just going back to that professor
Yeah.
who said Prabhupada, he was greater than Jesus and Muhammad. In what context? I mean, Srila Prabhupada is a Shakti-Vishavatar, and Jesus is a Shakti-Vishavatar, and Muhammad is empowered to spread the teachings of God. So how can you say that Prabhupada is greater than Jesus and Muhammad?
Okay.
They are both, depicted as Shakti-Vishavatar.
Yeah, so even if we take all three of them as Shakti-Vish avatars, and of course, that statement is outside of the academic perspective. It's a devotional academic perspective. It's not an academic perspective. So as an academic, he's just taking the material instances of these persons, and what he was saying was, it was more difficult for a person to take an entire culture outside of its natural habitat to a strange land on his own and do it. Whereas the other two persons he was comparing them to, materially, they may have been just as empowered, but they did it in their homeland, with their home boys, with their home people, inside of the culture that was already there. Not that there wasn't any opposition for them also, but his point was, in comparison materially, what he did was even more dynamic than what either of them did. On a spiritual platform, you could say that they're all equal. They just have their different pastimes. It's hard to say Lord Ram is greater than, Parshuram or Balaram or, like that. But academically, he's explaining it from a material perspective of things that are materially measurable. Does that make sense? Okay. Anyone else? Anything? Okay, keep reading.
Then he held up the unfamiliar red book. Because you are a little advanced, he said, I am going to read today from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Chaitanya what? No one was able to pick up the pronunciation. They had heard of Chaitanya, certainly, but not of this new book. But in his room the night before, Prabhupada had informed some of the devotees that he would start reading from a new book, Chaitanya Charitamrita. He said that Lord Chaitanya had told one of his disciples that understanding Krishna wasn't really possible, but that he would give the disciple just a drop of the ocean of Krishna consciousness, so that the disciple could then appreciate what the whole ocean must be like. Be patient as I present this, he had told them. It is revolutionary, but you should just be patient. It's interesting. That reminds me of one devotee said that 26 2nd Avenue, which is where they are at the moment, he said it's like the hub of the spiritual world. And he said from here, which ISKCON just bloomed and it just grew, but it was from here, from 26 2nd Avenue. And it's just interesting how Prabhupada is teaching these young men and women, like giving them snippets, you could say, of the spiritual world. I mean, it's when we read now, it's like Bhagavad Gita, okay, initially, then you read Srimad Bhagavatam, and then you come to the PhD, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and he's reading that to them now, these young men and women who most people weren't even, the cleanliness, the following, they weren't there, as it were, strictly, but he's just giving them little droplets of the spiritual world. It's really interesting.
And Prabhupada's petition to them was, just be patient as I go through this. You can imagine he knew you're probably not going to get a lot of what I'm going to speak from this book, because you hardly get Bhagavatam and you definitely hardly even get Bhagavad Gita. But just be patient. And I really appreciate this. Of course, we know that patience is Utsaha Nishchaya Daryat. Daryat is one of the 6 qualities that if we imbibe it, we're able to, Rupa Goswami says, undoubtedly make progress in devotional service. So we have to be patient, and sometimes we can be, anyone here finds themselves sometimes being impatient? Yeah, anyone impatient? There's a saying, I want the world and I want it now. Right now. And especially in the modern day, it's like, we don't want to, if someone is sick, it's like, okay, you have to go through this process. No, just isn't there a pill? Just give me the pill to fix it. I just want it to be fixed now. So actually we're in an age where knowledge and data is flowing at us at a rate of knots. I remember hearing a lecture once where he said, Scientifically, it is impossible to retain all the data that comes at you, even in 1 hour. If you think just from this little thing we carry around in our pocket, the government tracker. If we think, oh no, it's for my pleasure. Meanwhile, we're being tracked at every moment, all the cookies, all of this, all of that. But just the data that's coming in, we're bombarded. So we have to learn to be patient with ourselves and also patient with others. And that's even more difficult. Sometimes we're like, well, anyway, don't worry about me, but you need to hurry up. So like that. So we need to learn to be patient. So Prabhupada is encouraging them, just be patient.
In the storefront, Brahmananda turned on the reel-to-reel tape recorder as Swamiji began reading the Bengali verses, and both Satsvarup and Umarpati opened their notebooks and waited, poised for rapid note-taking. It was almost a college classroom atmosphere, as Prabhupada cleared his throat, put on his eyeglasses and peered over the large open volume, turning to the correct page. Whenever he wore the glasses, he seemed to reveal a new personality of deep Vaishnava scholarship. This feature of Swamiji emphasized his old age. Not that it showed him feeble or invalid, but it emphasized his scholarship and wisdom and his contemplation of the scriptures, in contrast to his vigorous drum playing in Tompkins Square Park, or his alert business dealings while looking for a new building. I was just going to say, because we're talking about the eyeglasses and the tape recorder, if you come to New York, if you go to the Brooklyn Temple, Radha Govinda Temple, they have all these original Maha items of Srila Prabhupada, like so many items, and they have the tape recorder, the glasses, they have his danda, various items of clothing. I believe his where he had to get his thumbprints when he came to the US, his shoes that he wore when he came, and now they're gold painted. But yeah, so all these items that they describe, you can actually see them. It's very nice to see them, and they have photos next to them, so it puts into context that he was using them, and they're there for us to see. It's really nice.
And the drum Srila Prabhupada played in Tompkins Square Park. Ramnath Maharaj was describing in one talk that, like, it's not a mridanga. It's not even like an Indian drum. It's an African drum. It's like an African bongo kind of drum. Bongo is actually South American. It's more like, what is it called? Do you know the name? Anyway, it's like an African drum that somebody just gave him. But Prabhupada immediately started playing on it, and he just knew how to do it, and he would just play. And actually, we don't realize, maybe we do, but for me it was like, oh yeah, Prabhupada used to sit under that tree for 3 to 4 hours chanting. It wasn't like 25, 30 minutes, kirtan or something, and then Haribol, let's go home and have prasadam. It was like 3 or 4 hours leading the chanting. And in one place, Prabhupada instructed, I forget who it was, but he instructed them that when you lead kirtan, you should chant in such a way that you can go on for hours. When you chant kirtan, you should just be ready to keep going, not almost non-stop. So Prabhupada would sit, and that original drum is in New Vrindavan, in the Palace of Gold. And they had it in a case. But for Tompkins Square Park, we had a team of young devotees who were eager. We couldn't get the original drum yet, but they gave us all the dimensions and pictures and videos, so we recreated a model of that original drum. And also there's a story around you may have, I think it probably would have come up already, the tape recorder, the reel-to-reel tape recorder, Gargamuni found it. And he thought, oh, I think Swami could use this. This is a new one. You know, I think it's Grundig. I think it was Grundig was the name brand. It was a tape recorder, and it had a pedal, and it had the, you know, the thing you hold. And Gargamuni says, you know, he spent like 25, 30, 40 minutes in the shop with the guy showing him how to do it, and then he bought it, and he took it back and told Prabhupada, oh, I got this thing you can record now, and you can turn it on. And Prabhupada said, oh, and Gargamuni said, should I show you? He said, no, I can do it. And then he just set it up, he turned it on, immediately started. And Gargamuni was like, how the hell did he do that? How did he know how to make this thing work? But it was like Prabhupada was just, you know, omniscient in certain ways. He just knew how the material energy moved, and he could look at it and figure out kind of organically. What is it they call it? Something is, if it's natural. Oh, I forget. There's a terminology they use, and when they make things, they want to make it so that it seems
ergonomic.
Not ergonomic, but anyway, like that. For him, it was just okay. It's obvious. Anyway.
Swamiji began reading, translating the story of Sanatan. Satsuru wrote Sutta, and Umakoti wrote Sunotan.
So, actually, Satsuru Maharaj and Umapati, Prabhupada was so genius. I mean, you might even say it may have appeared arrogant, like just starting the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and devotees were like, Prabhupada, there's like 8 of us here at the Lower East Side. What international? And he's like, anyway, you know, he just knew. And he also had them record his lectures, and he also had devotees sit and transcribe the lectures while he was giving them. It's like he just knew, you know, how beneficial, how important what he was doing was, and he could see it unfolding, and therefore he put people in place. But you can see these devotees were like Sanatan, and of course Prabhupada's heavy Bengali accent. I mean, I'm always amazed, like, how people, because even nowadays, like you play classes on Monday morning, I think, Prabhupada lectures, and I know in London when we used to do that, devotees would be like, I can't understand anything he's saying, so we had to get the transcriptions on the screen so they could hear and read at the same time, you know, like that. So Prabhupada, you know, his accent was so broad, so the devotees here, you can see it. He said Sanatan, and Satsuru Maharaj wrote Sutta, and Umapati Maharaj now wrote Sonatan.
And his brother Rupa, and how they became intimate associates of Lord Chaitanya. It was a historical account. Rupa and Sanatan had been born as Brahmanas in India, but they had served in the government under the Muslims, who were in power at that time. The 2 brothers had even adopted Muslim names, but when Lord Chaitanya was touring in their part of the country, they had met him and had become determined to give up their materialistic ways and follow his path of pure love of God. Rupa, who was so rich that he had enough gold to fill 2 boats, left his high government post, divided his wealth, and became a mendicant, and joined Lord Chaitanya. For Sanatan, however, there were more obstacles. It's interesting reading this about Rupa and Sanatan, and they're learned and they have wealth, they're well situated, and you can compare it, and they've just left everything to follow Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and you think, yeah, that's what all the young men and women did in New York in the early days, and they saw this Swami, they saw this exotic looking man, you know, he's Indian, he's older, and they, like Prabhupada said, you're born in America, you know, you have so many opportunities and such good karma, he says, but they gave that all up. And they did so much, and we were saying recently that maybe in the history of ISKCON there's ups and downs and different personalities, and maybe some, you know, it's not so always positive. But what they did and what they were empowered to do, whatever reason it was at that time, we enjoy now. I mean, one of these places is like that. And I was just thinking that, one Prabhupada disciple, Vamanade, he lives in Alachua now, and he's helping with the renovation project, Matchless Gifts, and when he came to give a talk, he was sitting up front, and then he pointed to just like a corner. He said, "That's where I used to sleep." Just because they slept in the storefront. It's not like they were ashrams, and then he said, "Yeah, that was my corner." And he said, "You had to be quick, because it was packed in those days, so everyone just lie down." And I was sitting there for the class, and I remember thinking, "Wait a minute." I said, "Prabhu, where did you go to the toilet? Where did you have a shower?" And then he said, "Shower? I'm a 17-year-old American, teen. What about shower?" That wasn't the first thing. That wasn't a priority, basically. But there is a bathroom in the storefront which they use, which I can't even go in. Anyway. And they said if we needed a shower, we just went up we walked through the courtyard at the back to Swamiji's apartment. They just used Prabhupada's apartment, when they needed a shower, not daily, when they needed it. But I was thinking, and he came from that type of family. It wasn't that he was on the street, it wasn't, but they were that, because I'll be honest, I wouldn't do that. I was sleeping on the floor like that, and they just said, "Yeah, we just laid down." And so we've noticed in our service at Matchless Gifts that, because we have a Murti of Srila Prabhupada there, so when you come, it's a storefront, so it's a glass front, so you can see Prabhupada through the glass front, and we're sitting there, it's open in the morning for anyone to come. People just walk by and they go like that, as you do when you look through the shop, and then they go like that. It's amazing, an amount of people that will then double back and come. Should I? Because the salt sippers, it's a spiritual theatre, and Prabhupada is there, and we find that Prabhupada is still sitting there, just as he did as we're reading in these pastimes, and he's pulling people in. The amount of devotees and those who are not devotees yet get pulled in, especially those who are not devotees get pulled in. What is this place? What are you doing here? Is it an art gallery? We get that a lot as well, because but people come in. It's powerful, because it's not that we're sitting there and saying, "Hey," like when we're sitting there, we try to welcome them in, but they look at people come in out of curiosity, and maybe they have some connection, but they weren't aware of it, or I was aware of this. Yeah, it's very powerful. You very much feel that Prabhupada's presence is there. And I wanted to share one past time, just recently before we came. One lady, I don't know, and I'm not good with ages, but older-ish lady, and her husband, man and woman walking by. I'm sitting there at the desk, the guest greeting desk, and they walk by, and I can see her come up to the window and go like this, because sometimes if it's sunny or whatever, you can't see, and she goes like that. The man that's with her is just holding back, and I thought, okay, she's going to come in, because she came to the door, and then she pulls back, and then they leave, and I remember saying, "Oh look, someone's..."
Well, they came to the door actually, and they walked away,
and
they came back.
Yes. And
they came to the door, and she opened the door, and I said, "Would you like to come in?" And she went, "No."
Yeah.
And then she walked off, and then we were like, "Oh, it's like almost."
Yeah.
They were almost there. They almost penetrated into the spiritual world, but they walked away.
Yeah, because it is. It's very confronting. It's such a saturated spiritual place. You don't realize it. It's like we don't see it. It's like some aura just coming from this building. And then she came back, and you're thinking, okay. And for me, I kind of like tend to read the room very quickly with people. So I'm a bit like, because I could see there was some tenseness and some, I don't mean negativity, but it wasn't flowing, the energy wasn't flowing, so I was like, okay, what's going to happen? And she came in, and the person who was the husband, he came in. Anyway, it turns out...
Well, I started doing the little tour,
yeah.
because there's these panels on the wall that give the history of Prabhupada. And by the second panel, I said, you already know all this, because I could just sense that she wasn't like, oh, and she said, well, yeah. She said, actually, I was born in the movement. And I was like, oh, really? Wow. And then she said...
Basically, she's the first child to be born in ISKCON. We tend to think it's Saraswati, Mataji's daughter. This is before Saraswati, and I confirmed it with Mataji. Yes, it's confirmed. And her name is Subhadra. So her mother is still a Prabhupada disciple. And so she was born into the movement. Her mother came to the movement already expecting a child. And Prabhupada was sitting with his disciples, and he said that, you know, this lady the father wasn't in the picture. So he said, the child needs a father. You know, this lady is going to give birth. The child needs a father. One of you should marry this lady. Prabhupada used to do things like that. Go and open a temple, marry this person. So one disciple said, Swamiji, I'll do it. So they got married. It's interesting because Subhadra, when she was talking to her, and she wasn't comfortable being in that place at all. To be fair, child growing up in ISKCON, things, yes, certain not so nice experiences and like this. So she was honest. She wasn't comfortable, and it took a lot of therapy, a lot of work to be able to walk through that door and do that. She did it because she saw Prabhupada. She saw Prabhupada sitting there. But she was honest about that. And then she said, there's someone's name on my birth certificate, and I don't know who my father is. She didn't know. So it's interesting. And but she'd like to know that side of her life, but obviously tentatively. But it was fascinating. I felt that Prabhupada pulled her in, you know, because they were in New York. They were just visiting, as it were. And they just had lunch around the corner somewhere. And she was like, I don't know if I want to go, maybe I should go. And yeah, it just felt like this lady just got pulled back in. And then I messaged Mataji actually, and she was like, oh, I wish I'd known. I wanted, because she knows her mother, and she knew Subhadra. And then she just explained the whole story, that this is who the person whose name is on the birth certificate, this is the devotee. It's not her birth father, it's not her biological father, this is who the person is. Unfortunately, she'd already gone, like on a text, and I have tried to connect with her on social media. She hasn't responded yet, but I thought I can share what I can share, and Mataji Devi was like, I'm happy to speak to her and fill in gaps. But it was quite amazing for her. And like she said, I'm the first child, you know, born in ISKCON, and her mother was also in San Francisco in the early days, so she was a bit vague as well. So that's the power of this place. You'd be surprised how many people come in. I don't just mean devotees who are like, you may say, oh, let me visit. Oh, you know, Match just gives, but devotees who have a serious history with the movement, and they come back and they really get overwhelmed, and we say, please God and Prabhupada, and that's just takes, yeah, that in itself, the emotions that come through when they do that. It's a really very special place. Right.
Just on the first point, and we'll end with this because we finished, I think, 8:45, right? Yeah, how Prabhupada was just sitting there. There was one day we were there, and there was a young lady, maybe 18, 19, and she was with another guy, and you could see they were kind of from Hispanic background, and they rode up on their bikes, and she was pointing in the window. And we were inside, and then the boy was like, and then they kind of looked in the window, and he was like, oh, and she was like, like, and then I kind of went over and I opened the door and I said, would you like to come in? And the boy rode away. Like I kind of scared him off, and the girl was like, I can come in? And I was realizing very quickly that she couldn't speak English and I couldn't speak Spanish. But I said, yeah, come in. So then she parked her bike up, and she came in, and she was just like looking around, and then, you know, she kept looking over at Prabhupada, and then I was trying to explain, you know, in pidgin English, and she was picking up some things, and we had the TV on, and it was showing Prabhupada, and then she went, She was just like, I was thinking, who is this person? She could have been with Prabhupada like here, like in the 60s or something, who knows? And she's like taking her, but it's just Prabhupada is just attracting them still bringing people in, still sitting there, 26 Second Avenue on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and just attracting these souls in, the potency of that holy tirtha. So like that. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Anyone has any reflections, questions, chastisements? Everyone just wants prasadam. Thank you very much. Thank you once again to all the devotees here for allowing us to come back and be in your Sangha and association. And thank you all for maintaining this holy tirtha, which is so valuable and so important to Srila Prabhupada. We were hearing yesterday from Krishna Vinda Devi and Gopa Swami Prabhu, that Prabhupada wanted a European headquarters. They were looking for that, and this is the kind of place that they purchased in one sense, but it's the only place that Prabhupada visited in Europe directly that he established that's left. So it's such a valuable, such an important holy place, and you have all these pictures. Now when I look at pictures like this, because I've been so involved with the whole 26 Second Avenue thing, that I just think, oh, these are so valuable, these pictures of Prabhupada in this space, it's just so historical, it's so profound, actually. We're so blessed and so fortunate to just be coming, because, this movement is meant to go on for the next 10,000 years, so what we're doing now to hold on to and preserve these sacred spaces is going to be foundational for the rest of the rest of Kali Yuga. So it's so important, such an important place. So thank you all for your immense austerities. Not that I'm anyone who should be thanking you or has any right to thank you, but I'm thanking you just as two aspiring devotees who get the opportunity to come to this holy place. So thank you. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Antakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Nitai Gauda Premanandi.
Praise Bhava Bhakti ki jai. Nitai Prabhu ki jai.
We're Bhakti Vrinda's ki jai.